Well, hi, Rayna. Thanks for helping with my project.
Hi, you're welcome, Nathan.
So, did you know that NASA's planning to send people back to the moon in 2024?
I am. I wasn't sure that there was a date fully planned for it yet, but I knew that we were finally getting back into the space race as it was.
How'd you
So,
find out about it?
uh, actually, my ex-husband had posted some stuff about he'd gone to Space Center Houston, and they had a fresh timeline put up, and I'm like, wait a minute. And then started doing research on my own, and it's like, okay, this is kind of cool.
Um,
So I'm ecstatic.
yeah, out of I think like the 104 interviews I've done so far,
Mm-hmm.
maybe seven knew about it. Um,
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, I'm not surprised, honestly. I mean, when we were growing up, after what was it? After Challenger, I think the magic went out of it for a lot of people, and it just became commonplace. I mean, we were sending the shuttle up practically a lot, so it was just kind of like, okay, it's gone up, it's safe, no problem. And it was sad because it was just like, for me as a kid, it was magical. It's like, okay, they're going to get to go into space. That is just the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, no, that's true. You definitely see a generational divide. Like people from like the Apollo generation are definitely a lot more enthusiastic than people from, say, the Challenger generation, for sure.
Well, I was in fourth grade when the Challenger the explosion happened. I think we were around, after that, I still kept an eye on things, but I think when they finally just decided after the second one we lost, and forgive me, I can't remember the other one that followed that. Um, but I think the generations that followed ours were kind of like just wrote it off. I don't know why. They just no enthusiasm for it.
I know, and I think, yeah, it's kind of interesting. I think everybody's become so cautious. Maybe I feel like that with like cell phones and constant updates on everybody is that our tolerance for risky things is much less. Um,
I Yeah, more sometimes is sometimes not. I mean, you only have to look at what's going on in Florida right now with those idiot teenagers, And yeah, anybody watching this, I apologize. It's just a generalization. I know not every kid out there's an idiot. Uh, I mean, it's just some certain generations like ourselves, we're kind of like, okay, it's a danger, but we still have the thirst for exploration. But a few generations later, they're more into like the extreme sports and how quickly can we not break our necks type situation. And then there's the video game. But because of the fact that they shut down that program so, and I say early, the newer generations, they just don't know where the magic is for that. It's just like, oh my gosh, the speed is coming from outer space, and the only connection they have is the International Space Station. And truth be told, some of the stuff that they've discovered is pretty interesting, but at the same time, you're sitting here going, okay, enough of that.
I know it's really hard to articulate any big discoveries that have come out of the International Space Station that have widespread appeal. I mean, lots of PhD papers, but it's hard to trace that back to, oh, that's made my life different in this way type of
Yeah,
innovation. Um,
if they could non-PhD a lot of that stuff when they release it out to the public, that would just simplify it down a little bit. So those of us who are high school graduates, but not quite there on the bachelor's degree, can follow along without having to look up four different dictionaries.
yeah, it's almost like you need somebody to kind of popularize, like do the Mr. Wizard thing on ISS research.
Something like that, or somebody just grab Bill Nye and let him do it.
Indeed. And
Dating myself again there.
every time that astronauts get launched, um, people ask me, where are they going? And oh, well, they're going to the International Space Station. Where's that? Oh, that's around Earth. And, it doesn't really feel like a destination, but like the moon, people can, I think, relate to that a little bit better. Like, I see it, you're going there. And so I think going to the
Yeah,
moon would be, I mean, well, people react differently to that.
I see it, but I also have heard a few arguments to the contrary on that. Uh, my mom. has told me stories about getting to watch the lunar landing when she was a kid, and how magical that seems. And I've watched the videos that, and I'm just like, gets chills down my spine. But then on the other hand, you hear people going, well, we've already gone to the moon. What's the point? And I'll be like, well, there's a lot more we can learn. Plus, this is, the stepping stone to sending a Mars expedition. You did be able to do a landing without doing something stupid. This is a good way to practice it. Plus, getting more data. And it's just like I said, the magic's gone for a lot of them, and they're just like, whatever. I don't think they realize there is that magical step, but there's also the technological leap that we had to make to get from the Earth's surface to the moon, and we kind of stagnated for a while. We don't know what we're going to be able to come up with once we start doing this again,
Yeah, it's really hard to articulate. I mean, like you said, a lot of people say, we've been to the moon, why are we going back? But, we really haven't done any type of infrastructure development. We've discovered there's water on the moon, or, ice in the poles of the moon. And, there's just so much more to learn in terms of lots of stuff. So have you followed any of the developments of SpaceX?
A little bit. I was kind of, see if I can put this into words here. I was kind of fascinated by the idea, and then there was the thought of, well, that could really go to purgatory in a handbasket fast if it went wrong. It's just, I don't know really how I feel about privatized space trips or what have you. I don't know, maybe I'm just getting too old, but it's just like, one hand it would be kind of cool to do, and then the other one is like, who the heck has that kind of money besides people with more time on their hands and common sense? It's weird.
Well, I mean, for the longest time, all of our rockets, I mean, the space shuttle was reusable, right? The actual orbiter part, but essentially the boosters and the external tank had to be rebuilt every single time and thrown away. But all of our rockets meant to launch satellites were just thrown away. SpaceX is actually re-landing the first stage, refurbishing and reusing it, driving down the cost of doing that.
Are they using the rocket style, or are they using like the old shuttle style, like the last ones were? I've never really looked into what they're throwing up there.
Yep, no, it's a rocket. It goes up and then it comes back and lands vertically. Sometimes on a launch pad, sometimes on a floating platform at sea, depending upon the needs of the launch. And they're also retrieving the payload fairings, using a boat with a net on top to try to catch it. And the only part that they're really throwing away is the second stage right now. So kind of reduce the cost. But in Brownsville, Texas, or it's in Boca Chica, near Brownsville, Texas, they're working on building this huge 100% reusable spacecraft they call the Starship that will be able to launch 100 people at a time. And they're talking about
oh my gosh,
being able to produce 2 of these ships a day, and 2 of these ships a week, and that each ship would be able to launch 3 times a day. So we're talking about mind-blowing transformation in terms of launching capability.
You know what? If health wasn't a requirement for being able to do that, and they brought the price significantly enough down, I'd be like, okay, sign me up. I'd like to be able to do it.
Yeah, hopefully it'd be available to everybody. Anybody who wants to, kind of prioritize that as something to do, as opposed to the elite. Yeah.
Are they sharing any of this tech with NASA, or is it pretty much just both entities doing their own thing now?
NASA and SpaceX share a lot. SpaceX is launching cargo to the International Space Station for NASA. SpaceX is also going to be launching astronauts. The first time should be this May to the International Space Station.
Oh, wow.
So this will be the first time since the retirement of the shuttle that we've had astronauts launched from American soil. So that's on an American rocket.
And the first time we used be the first time we've used that rocket style and since before, right around the time that we swapped over to the shuttle.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, I think Sierra Nevada has like a Dream Chaser spacecraft that looks like a mini shuttle. They plan to use for cargo, but eventually develop for astronauts as well. So you might see it return a little bit.
Yeah. I thought it was kind of interesting that they were bringing back the old capsule design, like from the Gemini and Apollo series. I just, or of course, significantly more techy, but I thought that I was just looking at the design and I'm like, they're going to have to figure out another way to give them more room around there because they were comparing it. And you remember as a kid in the museum, they had one of the capsules down there, and you're sitting here going, okay, how did they get up to go to the bathroom, much less anything else? So it's just like, and then they're sticking like 4 or 5, a crew in there, and they're going to have to figure something out because otherwise there could be homicide up in space, and who gets jurisdiction for that, right?
Yeah, that would be. I think it's sort of like the same way it is with marine vessels. The laws on the vessel are controlled by like the country whose flag it's flying type of thing. So uh,
Okay. I
can't
didn't think about that, but that makes sense.
can't yeah. Um, so what do you think? I mean, like somebody says, we have enough problems here on Earth. Why don't we solve the problems on Earth before we are going to space? What are your thoughts about that?
Again, I'm just a little bit of a history lesson from, hearing the stories from my mother. No, it's that for certain points in time, like the lunar landing, everything stopped. There was no thought about the Russians or at the time the Soviets and everything else. It was just like everybody's gaze was focused on one point. And it didn't matter, who hated what, or, they could launch missiles at each other within 2 seconds. It was just one universal pause. And then there's the technological aspect of it, is the fact that we grew so much as a planet with the technology, going from computers that span the space of an entire wall, if not the entire room, to little bitty things that you can carry in your hand now. And that's all byproducts of this, of our space exploration program. And I think a lot of the younger generation just doesn't remember that. They've never really seen the progression from VCRs to little things, files that you can play on your computer now. It's just, I'm hoping that once we get back into space, that the needs will continue to press and that the technology will continue to move forward and the generations will be able to, oh, this is another reason why it's good to spend the money on the exploration program, So I think for this generation, it's more of a show me, don't tell me type of situation. So once they finally start observing the differences, I think that's when they'll start to value it again.
Yeah, no, I think you're completely right. People kind of need to see something tangible that they can relate to. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so how about this line of thought? We've messed up the Earth. Why should we mess up the moon too?
Well, we've actually learned a lot from the explorations and stuff, the space trash that we found up there. I mean, and everything that we've left behind. And starting with a pristine canvas like that, one, it's going to have to be self-contained because of the lack of atmosphere, but it gives us another opportunity to, we're starting from scratch here. What works best for this? How can we reuse? Because there's like the water situation and the air situation is, they have to think on their feet in regards to making sure that it stays fresh in what we need. That can apply back towards the earth to help with the global warming and everything else. I think just use it like the moon will end up being our lab. I think in regards to that.
Yeah, that sounds interesting. I just imagine, at some point having a whole bunch of greenhouses on the moon and people protesting the greenification of the moon. And then instead of having green peace, you would have gray peace, going, we
Oh
want to keep
gosh, that's bad. Don't be putting ideas into people's heads. But in a way, I can see why they would protest because right now we're paying farmers not to farm. and that doesn't make sense to me. But at the same time, like greenhouses or hydroponics on the moon, that would be cheaper than having to ship, freeze dried food up like once a month to the moon or not. So, I mean, I can see both sides of the argument.
Yeah, that's true. Um, okay, so let's say you could magically see humanity 500 years from now. What do you think
Okay.
humanity would look like?
That's a good question. The hardest part would be, um, and yeah, before you go, oh Lord, here goes the sci-fi nut. Uh, we would have to come up with some sort of guidelines in regards to what we can or can't do when we, finally get off the planet and do like that. Because we could send a team to Mars and they could be like, I'm just going to do this, this, and this. Who's going to know? Because Earth is light years away, or whatever. Um, so it has a potential to be like a really good, solid exploration type society, or it could be, something even worse. We don't know what's out there. We don't know if there's, I refuse to believe that we're alone in the universe. You and I had this conversation years ago, but it's just, we need to lead by example, I think. And it just depends on the leadership and everything else. I mean, I'd like to think that we would be steps ahead in regards to living in peace and being the people that explores instead of people that would rather just turn around and do something cruel to our neighbor. So that would be my hope. But at the same time, as I can see where it can go potentially very, very wrong.
So some other specific things. Do you think we have people living continuously on the moon in 500 years?
I don't see why not. I
Uh,
mean, there's a lot of medications that are done in space, and if they can keep a lower gravity area where that can be done to manufacture those particular medications again, I don't see why it couldn't be profitable. I can't see why, we couldn't do that. I mean, it's reasonable, it's feasible, I think.
do you think there's a city on Mars?
We haven't explored enough to know. I mean, it may be inhospitable to us as human beings, but nature adapts. So I don't know. You know me. I like the idea of aliens out there.
Oh, that's another thing. Do you think we've come in contact with another intelligent species by that in 500 years?
Yeah, I think we're making enough noise as it is to draw attention to ourselves. And if we keep going the way we are, if there's something out there, and I'd like to hope there is, I think somebody's going to get curious.
Do you think it'd be a friendly encounter?
That's a whole bunch of ifs there. I mean, as a writer, I could see a list a mile long of what if the humans do A, the aliens do B. If it's just, it's back and forth. It just depends on how well we've adapted in 500 years to what they do. First encounter is a big thing.
I agree. Well, my last question is usually if it was safe and affordable, would you have any interest in going to space? But you've actually already answered that.
Yeah, I mean, it's cool, and I've always been fascinated with it since I found out that I was distantly related to an astronaut in the Apollo series. And so it's always kind of like, I would love to be able to do that, but then there's the whole I'm absolutely petrified of heights nonsense. So, but yeah, if they said, hey, you can do this, and your weight or whatever isn't a factor, you can go, and I'll be like, okay, sign me up. Do I need a passport?
Now, you say you're scared of heights. I'm also scared of heights. Like, you put me on a tall building, I can't walk up to the edge of the building.
Mm-hmm.
But I have no trouble in like a small airplane, like a Cessna 172. It's like if I'm in like a contained area, I don't really think of myself as being high. I was wondering if you had the same experience, or are you
I
also?
actually I actually took a trip to Canada some years ago. It was my first time in a plane, and the leg from Houston to LA and then LA up to, was it somewhere in Northern California, was fine. I mean, I got nervous when the plane started dropping a little bit, and that was just like, oh, I'm going to be. But the last leg of the journey, they're like, okay, flight XYZ, you need to go out onto the tarmac. My first thought was, what? I go out there. Nathan, I kid you not, it looked like it came off the set of an Indiana Jones movie. It was like the old style plane with that was just, my first thought was, are there cameras here? Are we shooting an Indy Jones movie and I didn't know about it? We get into the thing and I'm like, it's okay, it's in good shape. Of course, I'm by the window. And I look out, the tires are smoking. We're heading to the runway. It's like, I'm like, is that supposed to be happening? It's like all my phobia just rolled into one ball. Of course, bad weather hit, so we're bouncing all over the place, and I'm sitting here going, we're gonna die, we're gonna die, we're gonna die, we're gonna die. I get off that plane, and my friend is just like, are you okay? And I was like,
Did you fly back, or did you all drive or take the train back, or how?
I flew back, but it was a different route. We left from the Washington airport there, went to Chicago, and then from Chicago to Houston. So I did learn that particular trip I would never go through Bush International Airport again if you paid me. That thing has gone from smaller airport to, holy crap, this is a mega city inside of an airport. It's like going down 4 levels, up 2 to get to the gate that you need to get to, and you've got 10 minutes, and you're just like, can I do this?
It is a huge airport. So any last comments?
I think for anybody who watches this, especially the younger generation, just remember that there is a lot of magic as well as science for this particular program, and just try not to be skeptical. Just watch it and see, and then just remember too that, you know, Neil Armstrong was right. It wasn't just man, it was humanity that we're doing this for. So that's a big thing, especially in today's day and age when we're dealing with health issues and political nonsense that really doesn't need to be going on except for people being idiots, you know. So this has the opportunity of being a unifier in a great many ways, and I'm really hopeful to see that in my lifetime.
Cool. Well, thank you so much.
You're welcome, Nathan.